everybody. It's Matt Robinson, and welcome to Game Brain, a board game podcast about our gaming group. I am the enthusiastic gamer, Matthew Robinson, back on the ones and twos with you as always. Joining me today, Trey Alsop.
Hey, Matt, I'm happy you're doing an accent just like Tom.
Thank you so much. But beyond the excitement of having Trey here, we have a new member. We have a new host.
It's exciting.
This is exciting. We are adding a brand new member to the podcast.
A co-host.
Please welcome Charlie Kirk.
Charlie.
Can you imagine? Okay. Just throw in like the weirdest, like alt-right, hardcore. Like,
all right, do a proper intro.
No, we have had we've had some new people coming to game nights recently.
New blood,
and one of the best we've had. Well, I'll just say the best is Jordan Sayyah. We are so happy to have you here. Welcome, Jordan.
Thank you very much. Excited to be here, and thanks for calling me the best. Appreciate that.
Jordan is a very enthusiastic board gamer and hobbyist. He reminds me of myself a lot in the sense that he goes deep and really likes a large breadth of games. It's rare I can find a game that Jordan isn't into. I'm curious about Flesh and Blood. Hey, Jordan, you play that? Oh, not only have I played it, I own like thousands of dollars worth of cards, and it's like half my life. Hey, Jordan, have you tried this really heavy Euro? Not only do I own it, I've played it 37 times. Like, Jordan is just like he knows what's going on. He's plugged into the hobby. And
we need more players like that and less like me.
That's right. People who are enthusiastic and excited about the hobby, open to new ideas.
Pleasure to be around.
Pleasure to be around.
Right, open-minded.
Yeah, can teach games, down to play whatever.
Bathes.
Yeah, bathes. So it's very exciting to have you here, Jordan. You have a large. What I'm trying to say is you have a breadth of knowledge about the hobby.
Thank you.
And you're not.
And I bathe.
You're not an old fart like the rest of us. You're a young whippersnapper.
You're a young fart.
You're
Do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, Jordan?
Yeah,
Introduce yourself.
Tell us your history with the hobby, and also let's build up to the moment where you reveal your host.
Because we don't know.
Okay, yeah.
It has not been
we're
revealed.
saving this live for air.
We're really building it up.
Yeah, so my history with the hobby, I started playing board games when I was, in high school, I guess. In college, I played a lot of Catan. And then after college, I got into heavier and heavier games. Just got in on the first Kickstarter wave. So Scythe, Tricarion, some of those early Kickstarter games.
Yes.
Really
speaking Matt's language here.
There you go. Yeah. Really played a lot of Euros for a long time, almost exclusively Euros, like getting heavier and heavier, Lacerda and Mind Clash and stuff like that. And recently, over the last 2 or 3 years, I've been trying to explore a broader set of games. So team-based card games, for instance, but also 18xx and competitive card duelers, all sorts of games, trick-taking games.
Full nerd.
Full nerd. Really delved in.
In your college group, were you the one who brought in Catan, or were you introduced to Catan?
No, I played Catan in high school, but there was some people who lived beneath me in my building, like sophomore and junior year of college, who played Catan before me, and they played every day. And so we'd play Catan, we'd have it all set up. It would take us maybe 30 minutes to play a game. Sometimes we'd set up the board, say, oh, blue's going to win this game, and just call it right there. And then
right,
we played so much of it, yeah.
Today we are going to be. Well, I'm going to get to your name in a second, but today we're going to be talking about War of the Ring, the card game, a new hot team-based card game that is not a collectible card game, not a living card game, not a trading card game, but a
complete game.
A complete game you just buy and can play. And I think it's a great first episode for Jordan to come in because Jordan, in a lot of ways, enjoys all types of games. And I think this is a game that appeals to people who really like card games, who really like board games, who really like a wider breadth than just Euros, who like thematic games, who like heavy strategic games as well. So I think this is a great first game for Jordan because this is a game that would speak to sort of an omni gamer, somebody who likes a large range of different styles of games.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a great game to also broaden your horizons a little bit, but we'll talk more about that later.
Totally.
I'll also point out that with Alfred gone, we have replaced the rules lawyer with an actual lawyer.
Oh, is that name available? I just assumed it wasn't.
That's right. So Jordan is an actual lawyer. A real, true-to-life lawyer.
And that's all you want to mention about that, right?
Yeah, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. Dimitri's also a lawyer.
That's true.
Yes.
I'm not saying...
He's not our first lawyer.
I did say actual lawyer.
You did. Oof. But in terms of that, that's not Dimitri's daily job.
No,
this is Jordan's daily job. They both have their law degrees. They both are, past the bar and all that. But this is Jordan's daily life. Dimitri is a writer.
That's true.
Yes, I think you'd agree with that.
Yes.
I don't think we're speaking out of turn.
And I'm not just elbowing Dimitri because I can elbow Dimitri.
Yeah. Tell us your name, Jordan. Everybody on the podcast, we have our own little name. I am the enthusiastic gamer. Trey is the game designer. Paul is the game breaker. What are you, Jordan Sayyah?
So I would have been the rules lawyer, I think, but I'm going to stick with my original pick, which is the experience gamer. And I'm going to use that in two ways.
Experience or experienced?
Experience, no D at the end.
No D.
Yes.
Love it.
No D for me. The experience gamer, because I want to play games that create a new experience, something that doesn't just bring the old brown Euro back to the table. And also because I want games that require you to gain experience in them, to develop a meta and to really get good at them. I think those are some of the most interesting games. And those are the types of games I want to explore more.
I love it.
I like it.
Yeah, that's a really good one. The experience, or maybe the
and also like you are
experiential might be
the
better.
Experiential gamer.
Yeah, we're starting to get a little academic there, but you are a big Blood on the Clock Tower fan, and that's an experience.
Yep, it's an experience, and it also gets better the more experienced you get.
I've heard that from people.
Right.
You are as interested in the first play as you are in the 60th.
That's right.
And you really enjoy games that give you a great of both.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's actually not true. I think I'm really happy to play a game that gives you a terrible first play.
Sure.
If it's going to give
have to be
an
open
incredible 60th play.
Oh, I like that too.
Right. And because we play games
like Agricola.
I had a great first play of Agricola. I loved it from the start. Loved it from the start.
I hated it. Now it's my favorite game of all time.
Yeah. Well, you learned.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a lot of games are built now to just draw you in on that first play and have a great first play.
Or have a
you're only going to play it
3
times.
plays. Yeah. And
Right.
then never care about it again.
Exactly. So I want to try and avoid those to the extent possible.
I love it. Well, like I said, today we're going to be reviewing War of the Ring, the card game. But before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about what we've been playing lately. I'm going to hit you with a box fart. There we go. Trey, tell me a little bit about your gaming week.
Well, we played on Tuesday.
That's right.
We were planning on playing some War of the Ring, but then the numbers didn't work out.
Yeah, War of the Ring is one of those rare must-be-4 games, of which could often be a real game night spoiler, because you're planning on having 8, you're figuring 2 4s.
8 RSVP'd, but...
Next thing you know, you've got 6.
As was Tuesday, yeah.
Can't play a 4 and a 2 because that's weird. So you ain't playing the 4-player only game on the 6 nights.
I mean, I think a 4 and a 2 is possible if you have some people that are like dying to play,
like Flesh and Blood or something, or like they're super into a card game together.
Right, Fields of Arl or
Levy
Twilight
campaign.
Struggle or something.
I mean, we did recently get the new Uwe Orienberger Canal, which is 2-player only, and even I remember Elder was like, "I'll play that."
Yeah, Elder was ready.
Yeah. But yeah, no, it could happen. It's just,
But anyway, that's what happened then. It's like we wanted to do something with 6, so that so we're either 3 and 3, or we went for the full 6.
3 and 3 is usually great. I usually love a 3 and 3, but we are currently trying to get many reps in on this. So instead,
Well, what happened there? You wanted to play Age of Steam, right? Or
Yeah, well, we just got the new maps, and so
We
I thought
got
it
new
would be
maps.
a good option for all 6 of us. Yeah,
so Eagle Griffin, about 6 months ago or a couple months ago, released the next 2 box expansions for it, and they actually have a Kickstarter, right now for I think the next 2 boxes, which is like 8 or 9 more maps. And so we pulled out a 6-player map, and we were going to pull out one of the stranger ones, or a little more MacGuffin-y, complicated.
we were going to
ones.
play Paris, right?
We're going to play
Or
France. We
yeah.
were looking at southern China. We were looking at a couple, and then we realized Elder, who I think has,
As an experienced gamer,
as much or maybe more experience than anybody at the table, had never played Age of Steam, and we were like, well, then we just have to play like Western USA, or just sort of a more basic first player game. And I think 6 player is actually a good first Age of Steam, because it shows you get to see different play styles. It could be over really quick, which is nice. And so we pulled out.
Right, that's what we determined about 6 players. Like, it seems like that might be really long, but it gets compressed,
Odds of
and
bankruptcy
it
are
might actually be over after just 3 rounds, where you can kind of call it.
Right,
which is what happened here.
Right, somebody can get so far ahead, or
Somebody can
get bankrupt.
Someone.
If the game is over. So we played Western US, and I adore Age of Steam. I love it, and it was one of my sort of what we're talking about. One of my worst first plays to best 60th played games
Yeah, it's a great
ever.
example of that.
Loathed it the first time I played it. First of all, I thought it was extremely ugly. I was very new to the hobby. This was probably one of the first games Tom introduced me to when I was, 12, 13 years ago. And you go, oh, you got to try Age of Steam. You got to try it. And it was just like he brings out this bland, ugly. It looks like, it just looks
just a
like
big hex grid. Yeah.
There's no theme to it. And it's super complicated. And everybody had been playing it for 10 years and was super good at it. And it was just like, it was horrible. And
it's nice that you think that we're super good at it.
You guys are.
We were more experienced than you. That's all.
And this is a game where experience is just misery for everybody else. The more you've played, the less fun everyone else has.
Yeah, very hard.
It is not a forgiving game.
No. And that's one of the best things about it. If you're into that, and so I actually had a miserable night playing it with you guys a few nights ago, which often happens with Age of Steam, and it was sort of ironically something that Elder and I were talking about. It was like because he had never played it before,
right.
And he was like, "This sucks. Like this is painful." But then at the end, he goes, "But I really want to get better at this. I really feel it's my fault that I didn't do better. And like, I don't want this game to beat me." And Age of Steam sort of has that thing with me where it's like, I was miserable. Halfway through the game, I just realized I had made massive mistakes and was dead. And just like,
your first move had created lots of opportunities for other people.
Yeah, I just opened up the floodgates for everybody, and then I just got way behind the curve. And yeah, it is a misery generator. But for some reason, I ended it being like, God, I hope we pull this out next week again, because I just want to get better at it, and not because like I want to win, but because I enjoy the puzzle it puts before you and the interactivity that it has at the table. And I really look forward to that time where I feel proud of myself for actually like rising to the challenge as opposed to, drowning in the misery of Age of Steam.
Yeah, victory in Age of Steam feels better than almost anything. Yeah. You're putting your head against someone else's head and the rules really get out of the way. Yeah. And it's just, how far ahead can you think? How can you make this board state work for you? It's an endlessly enjoyable puzzle.
Yeah, we almost there's probably a word for this of like games where you have first time playing it where you're scratching the surface, and there's some deeper lessons to be learned, of course, that can only be learned from experience and repetition. Age of Steam is one of those. War of the Ring card game might be certainly one of those. Like getting card knowledge becomes really important. But there is also especially with Age of Steam, there's that moment when we've done the setup, and you really do need to sit and stare.
Everyone just has to shut up
at the board for some minutes, and it's not just even the board. It's not even just the cubes that are on the board. You're actually looking at here are the cubes that are going to come out, and there's about 30 or 40 that are in reserve, but you can see, this particular city is going to generate a lot of yellow.
Right.
So
it doesn't look good now, but round 3, that thing could be popping.
I'm going to have I'm not going to. These are going to be 4 or 5 point deliveries later on in the game if I can make that happen. And that's a lot to grok. And then certainly you can't do it in your first game.
Right.
But later on, you should be looking and saying okay, there's some opportunities here.
And you didn't even mention the auction math you have to be doing every time. It's like, okay, how many shares am I going to take? How much money am I going to spend? How am I going to get as close to having $0 at the end after I pay so I'm not taking extra loans I don't need to be taking? That's like actual real math you have to be doing.
Yeah, there's some serious accounting in this game.
And if you are off, you may end the game.
Your game is over.
The game might be over if you are off on one share.
Yeah, it can be brutal. But I think your point about looking at the board at the beginning is especially important because as an experienced player, you want to be planning your 4s and 5s from the beginning. Like, how am I going to deliver 5 on this map? Right. And that's going to dictate my first move. And that's thinking so far ahead.
And even then,
there was start thinking like that.
There was the stuff that I was thinking about, but then Matt, you opened the game, you won the first auction, you played an urbanization, and you placed a city kind of in the center of the board, which changed all the calculus that I was thinking of, because I had been budgeting to go west, then other players went west before me, and I ended up taking the thing that I thought was kind of the low hanging fruit as the 4th player.
Right.
But even so, for all the planning we did, your opening move, I think, changed the landscape of the board tremendously, and I pivoted, and I think that's really interesting. Also, is that it's not just you see the whole board and you know how it's going to play out.
You can't plan ahead too much, but you have to have a plan. But then you have to also be ready to just completely be tactical.
And that's a tougher thing that also comes with experience is actually budgeting for flexibility.
Yeah.
And that's That's tough, but you got to be ready as things happen because there's a ton of races in that game.
Oh yeah, and every phase of the game, there are 3 ways that you can lose what you wanted to do. Whether it's you don't get first build, you don't get first move, you don't get to go first, you don't, somebody jumps ahead of you
Someone
in the
steals your
passing order.
cube.
Exactly. Like at every moment, there's like 3 different people that are always about to stab you in the back.
So this is like on the interactivity scale.
Yeah.
Like forget weight, but just on the interactivity scale, this is really high. Even though it's not a combat
games
game
that are more interactive. I
yeah,
mean, it's
like
hard to think of
without
something.
actually, like troops on a map where you're killing each other. Like this feels incredibly interactive,
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah,
definitely.
which is why we keep coming back to it.
yeah. It's why everybody's been playing it since it came out in 2003 or something. Yeah, 20 years.
We also played. We're still running up to Matt's tease of like trick-taking games that are coming up, but we played a bunch of card games also on Tuesday.
So I've been getting very into. What's funny is I was sort of always the anti-filler. And
Right, you want to get to the serious stuff.
right. Well, I'm a person with limited game time, and I can only game maybe one night a week if I'm
You
lucky.
have a life.
Well, I have children, which
Right.
is
That's what I meant.
different than a life. It's just I have other lives than my own, and they dictate my amount of gaming I get. And so often I come to game night and I'm like, I have a 3-hour game I want to play. It's 8:00. There's a 45-minute teach. Get those fillers out of my face.
Right.
Like, this is my only night, you guys. Like, don't mess with
Get
me.
Avalon out of here.
And yeah, we're going to do a whole episode about trick taking and card games in general that I've gotten into. But yeah, I've had this renaissance, as many people are saying, is happening in the hobby as well, this trick taking renaissance. And I fell in love with trick taking games because of Jordan and David, friend of the podcast, David Gillison, who both.
Friend David Gillison,
Who both got me super into trick taking games by introducing me to a couple at the end of a game night at Tom's like a month or 2 ago. And as I am wont to do, I went way too deep down the rabbit hole and got real into it. And so we'll explore that in an episode. I'm going to take you through my whole trick-taking journey. Probably not next week, but the week after is what I'm looking at. So 2 weeks from now, we'll be doing a whole episode on that. I'll tell you all about my journey from noob to obsessive in the trick-taking world. And so at game night lately, I've been pulling out a few of these quick card games. Some are trick-takers, some are not. And we've been playing them before. On Tuesday, we played 2 non-trick-takers to begin with, and then we ended the night with a trick-taker. We played a game. These are both Japanese games. The first one is called Nana, which I think is really, really fun and interesting. It's about 10 minutes long, and it is sort of a memory game. It's not sort of a memory game. It is a memory game, which when you read the rules, you think this isn't a game. Like it's almost like the mind and just like, what is the game here? And then within a few hands of it, I feel like you're like, oh no, there's actually some pretty cool decisions.
Well, tell
here to
people
make.
how it plays.
So everybody has a hand of cards. They range from, I think, 1 to 13, something like that, 1 to 12, and 1 to 12, right? And you have a random set of cards in your hand, and you have to organize them from lowest to highest, and you can't change that order.
Right.
So you get your hands, you organize it, and then you also have a certain number of face-down cards in the middle of the table. So everybody's got a hand that has to go from low to high. They've got some face-down cards, and on your turn, all you're doing is revealing your lowest card or your highest card, asking somebody to reveal their lowest or highest card, or flipping up one of the face-down cards on the table. Your turn is over when you have not made a match. So I say to myself, let's say I say to Jordan, show me your highest card. Jordan shows me an 11. I go, woohoo. I reveal my highest card, which is an 11 because it was my highest card. And I go, now I've made a pair. Now I need to get one more to get trips. And then I flip over.
And trips is how you take.
Trips is how you score.
Yep.
So then I flip over a random card from the middle of the table. It's a 7. My turn ends. But now I know where 2 of the 11s are. But now everyone knows where 2 of the 11s are in the game because everyone's seen them. And then it's Dimitri's turn. And Dimitri goes, I reveal my highest card. It's an 11. Matt, reveal your highest card. Jordan, reveal his card. Dimitri has scored the first trips. There are 3 of each card in the game. So all the 11s are now out. Dimitri must now score 2 more trips to win the game. So 3 sets of 3 to win the game. Or his 2 sets have to equal 7. So if he has a 12, he now needs trips of 5. So it's 12 minus 5 is 7. Then he would instantly win the game. You can add or subtract to get to 7. Either way, it doesn't matter. You just have to hit 7 on your 2. Or if you get the trips of 7, you instantly win the game.
Which is hard because they're in the middle of your hand.
Because they're in the middle of your hand. And
Which I almost did. If the game hadn't ended right before my turn.
Right. And that's the fun of it is like if you could open the game with 3 7s in your hand and not win because you can't reveal those until you get rid of your lowest or your highest cards. And that's a really
You have
fun
to kind of
little
get to
puzzle.
them, right?
You want other people
So
to
this
take
is like
your trips.
sophisticated Go Fish.
100%.
Yeah,
It's
100%.
very Go Fish feeling. It also has some of the most beautiful card art I've ever seen. Sai Beppu, who is a female Japanese artist who is incredible. And the minute you see Sai's artwork, you will start collecting her games, as many people do, and I am one of them now. Kaya Miyano is the designer of it. It was sort of like a huge hit in the Japanese market and has not really come here yet. Somebody's going to pick it up and it'll become like the new Love Letter, I think. I think it just has potential to be one of those like...
Played fast.
Very fast. It feels like Love Letter. And a lot of
people, we only like run around the table twice in that game or something like that? Or
it's really fun. Right now, it's something you have to import from Japan, but it's awesome. I don't know.
It's a nice trifle.
It's a nice, exactly. I almost enjoy it more than Love Letter just because it actually creates, I think, even more laughs than Love Letter can make, because you get those things where somebody's like forgot where the 11 was,
Trey,
and they say, and everybody else knows that they forgot, and now everybody else.
Right, there was a moment like that
where
someone confidently picked up the card from the center of the table to make their third 11, and it wasn't.
Right. It was. I think I did that.
I think it was you too. Yeah.
It was. It is a memory game. But it's a silly memory. It's not like if you forget, it's funny. It's not really that painful.
Right.
It's not like That's Not a Hat.
That's Not a Hat is great.
Okay, sure.
We then played another Japanese game. These are often referred to as the Tokyo Game Market, TGM games, which is sort of the Essen of Tokyo or Japan. Sorry, that happens every year, and that's where all these games come out. And so there's another game from Oink Games, who is sort of known for having a lot of really small box games. An artist goes to what's that game called? An artist goes to Paris or something.
New York,
An artist goes to New York is their big one. They picked up the American version of Scout, or not the American, that's actually the Japanese version. There's just another version. But Oink Games makes these little tiny beautiful boxes, and they have a great game called Startups, which is also, I think, a really great sort of filler game that is a stock market card set making game.
That's the theme, at least.
Designed by Jun Sasaki. Really simple, something you could teach to anybody in 5 minutes, but instantly engages people because it's just a very simple playing cards from your hand that becomes stocks in companies.
Simple
in front
mechanisms, but like deep emergent decisions that kind of blow your mind as you progress.
The only person who scores each company is the person who has the most stock at the end, and everybody else has to pay them for every stock they have. So it's this weird race.
And so you might think you're playing this as like, well, I just won't take any stocks of companies I'm losing at.
Right.
But you can't. But you can't avoid it.
Right. And that's also that one's clearly a lot more strategic and gamey than Nana, and can be played, I think, at a fun, sort of sophisticated level. But
I'm loving this game. I'm bad at it.
Yeah,
but I'm completely intrigued by this game.
Yeah, it's very. It's also can just be fun and silly, and like, because the fun part of the game is you have a hidden hand of 3 cards at all times, so you never really know if you're winning a company, because you can know if you're that far ahead, but for the most part, like, there's the fun gamesmanship. As the game is over, okay, everybody reveal their hand, and I own nothing.
right. That happens at the end a lot of times. It's like, I think I might be winning this. You reveal your hand. It's like, oh, I'm wrecked.
Yeah.
I did so poorly here. I'm deeply negative.
In that way, it feels kind of like Baby Arboretum, where you have this secret hand of cards, and you're hoping to score.
You're really good at finding the comps for these games. It is a super Arboretum-y game, just like Nana. What was the Nana comp you had?
Well, I think that was Trey's, but he said Go Fish.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's right.
Yeah, that's true.
But with this game, it's nice because you can play it with 6 instead of Arboretum's really like 2 to 3 player type level. But it really allows you to have that sort of Arboretum feel with a bigger sort of party game atmosphere.
There's a nice thing also when because cards are constantly being played to like the market in the center. A lot of times a player across the table from you will play a card and you're like, ooh, if that gets to me, that's really gonna make it, and then it doesn't get to you. But what it means though is like you are hanging on every single player's play.
Yeah.
You're never checking out. You should be tracking, especially because you see people take things. There's a memory aspect of what cards are people holding, because that's your like secret stock portfolio that can win or lose these stock competitions. Right. So it didn't feel especially memory-ish, but I think like if you were playing it well, you'd be like, oh, I know Matt's 3 cards.
And of the like Tokyo Game Market games, this is a big one. Like Shut Up and Sit Down already gave this a glowing review in the last couple of years, and this is definitely a popular one in that world. And actually, this one I think I picked up on Amazon. This one's actually not that hard to get. But and then we ended the night with a game from Cosmos, who in the trick-taking world is very well known for releasing The Crew, which is sort of the game that in many ways kicked off off this trick-taking renaissance that the hobby is
trick
going
shtick.
through. The trick shtick. Inside Job is incredible. I'm just going to stop you right now. If you like trick-taking games, just go spend $20 on Amazon right now. Don't even listen to the rest of this.
Yeah.
This is a top 10 trick-taking game of all time, I think. And like it blew
It's an Avalon
my-
alternative.
This is trick-taking meets Avalon. And there's times in this hobby where you bring a game to the table that you never played before, but that you think is going to be good. And you watch as you realize that it sucks. And that happens a lot. There are times you bring games to the table you think is good, and it's much better, and everybody's looking around like, wait, are we going to be playing this for the rest of our lives? And like, we kind of had that experience with Inside Job.
We'll see, but I think this will rival Avalon for being like the first game type of thing.
Yeah.
And to me, it did, Jordan, because I know you're a huge fan of Blood of the Clock Tower. Like it did what I wanted Blood of the Clock Tower to do.
Right.
Like maybe this is my fault, is the expectations I have and my disappointment with Blood on the Clock Tower. Like this is obviously a much more streamlined, shorter. But it does hit that kind of hidden role. Who are you? Why are you doing this? People were making certain plays and was like, "Oh, you're totally bad."
Let me give the elevator pitch for it real quick. So this trick taking, just straight up trick taking game. Everybody plays a card. Highest lead card of the suit wins. Trump cards beat everything. And at the beginning of the game, much like Avalon's, everybody's given a roll. And there's a basic game you can play, which is just like 3 good guys and a spy. The spy, though, doesn't have to follow any of the rules. Can play anything from their hands.
Lie.
They can just lie and play any card they want. At the beginning of every round, the first player sees 2 missions, which are very crewish, and like first player must win this trick, or third player must do this. And
these cards must be played in order.
Right. The good guys win if they get a certain amount of missions. The bad guys win if they get a certain amount of briefcases or intel, which is sort of the resource in the game. The bad guy wins immediately if they get in a certain amount.
Right. And you get those when you win a trick.
So just by winning a trick, everybody wants to win a trick because it's good. This intel can be used for other things. But also, you don't want anyone to get too many because then they win immediately. But also, the bad guy can just tank missions, but then you can't help but take missions sometimes because it's a trick-taking game and you don't have the color to... Now I have to play my highest purple and I didn't mean to win it, guys. And everybody's going, you're definitely the spy. And
it's just my hand.
You're off to the races. You know it's so good.
There's even a thing of like with the suitcases, because playing a suitcase or intel allows you to turn a card into a trump. There's times where if you have a high confidence that a player behind you is actually on your team, like you can use that power being like, it's okay if I don't get this intel because Matt's going to get it and I know Matt's good. So like, I think as we play it more, you'll see more of that. I'm playing intel in order to make things happen, but I have to kind of like correctly guess your role in order to do it.
Right, because if you put an intel on a card to turn your card into a trump, whoever wins that trick gets that intel +1.
And then, so the game comes with a bunch of just regular good guys, and just like Avalon, you get your basics,
right?
Your basic reds, and then your bad guy.
And then we're starting to fold in,
and then it comes with like
rolls.
10 new rolls that get crazy, like neutral rolls that will switch.
Which is
sides.
the Blood of the Clock Tower thing.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then
okay, you don't like my comparison.
Well,
at all.
I don't like you insulting Blood on the Clock Tower to start.
Fair,
but I do
sure.
think that this game creates
but we're
the
talking
sort
about
of
this.
meta game that that allows you to really read into players' moves.
And we'll play in 15 minutes.
And it will play very
I
quickly.
think this is really like in the running for game of the year kind of vibes. Like, I mean, it's just awesome. Like just how the crew was like, oh my God, how did nobody make this? Is so fun. Like this is addictively fun. I got the same feeling from Inside Job. It's amazing.
I think I like it a lot better than the crew. Actually.
Yeah, I do.
Oh, wow.
But
I think
this is more my kind of game.
You need 5 players exactly, right? Because it's 3 to 5. And
but it scales pretty well because there's just less missions and less intel that are needed. I think, obviously.
I think you're right. That like 5 is going to be
really
the
what
way
you
to
I think
go.
it sings at 4 or 5, but I'd be very interested to try it at 3.
Sure.
Be interesting to see. I mean, it's fast. You play a whole round in 10 minutes.
Right. It's very quick.
And then you can just play best of 3 or whatever you want to do. It's pretty great. It's pretty special.
Yeah.
We're excited. Hopefully the depth that seems to be there will continue to kind of emerge.
Yes, definitely. More than any other game, you can see someone play a card and think,
It was a great
there are 10
experience.
reasons why. It was a great experience. And we'll gain more experience and get better.
Well, we just hit the 30-minute mark. I love this, the synchronicity of the timing here. We've ended our preamble.
We're past the nonsense.
This is when the ad buyers tell us we have to start our review. So we will go ahead and jump into our review of War of the Ring, the card game. Now, what in God's name is this thing? Why are we playing the card game version of a beloved, famous 2-player board game that takes 4 to 5 hours and is wildly complicated? First of all, before we get into it, has anybody played War of the Ring, the board game?
I have.
Have you played it?
Of course,
Trey?
Jordan has. I think I did, but it was quite a while ago. Or is that how old is War of the Ring? Could I be confusing it with
2007
another Lord of the
maybe?
Rings themed play across the map game?
No, this is the big one. 2004 was when it first came out. The second edition
Okay.
came out in 2011.
Okay, it's been a while.
Yeah, 20 years or so. Yeah. I've played quite a bit of it. I love it, clearly. I have quite a tie to Lord of the Rings as a theme. My child is named after a character in Lord of the Rings. I took my honeymoon in Middle Earth, New Zealand, and like
That's right.
literally,
You've been to Hobbiton.
I've been to Hobbiton. No, it's a huge part of my life. It's my favorite fantasy world of all time. Jordan, what is your experience with the original board game of War of the Ring?
I've played it 4 times, I think 2 times each with 2 different people. So we never got really deep into it,
Right.
but, sampled it a little bit.
So the biggest difference between the board game and the card game is the board game's a 2-player game, a great 2-player game. This could be a 2-player game, but is really designed to be a 4-player 2 versus 2 team game, which is not something you see a lot in our hobby. Team games are very rare. Usually because they demand a certain player count, which can often be, kryptonite to selling games because people want to be able to play it with their significant other. They want to be able to play it when they have one friend over. They want to be able to play it when they have a couple friends over. Games like Deal with the Devil or things like that are like, no, 4 only, go away, are hard to get published. And, that makes sense to me. But the guy, the man who designed this is named Ian Brody. And Ian has quite the accolades when it comes to team-based games. He, I think, has designed the only team-based game that we as a group really liked ever, which is Quartermaster General.
Right, I love.
We love it. That's a 6-person, 3 versus 3 card-based World War II game that we became obsessed with a few years back and thought was just fantastic.
6 is a tough number,
Yeah.
but it was so much fun to play, incredibly accessible. Like, it's not super
10-minute
complicated
10-minute
mechanisms
tops.
at all.
Play a card, draw a card.
Card driven, you'd think World War, it does have a map though in Quartermaster General.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This
but everybody's
doesn't.
got a deck.
Yeah.
They've got the Germany deck, the Italy deck, the Japan deck, the USA deck, and you got to sort of know your deck and things like that.
But the game isn't just about playing your own cards correctly.
Right.
The game absolutely rewards you for coordinating with your allies.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Right. And that's where a lot of the fun is can you, as the situation is constantly changing, can you play cards that are going to set up your allies to do amazing things?
Yeah.
I'd be curious to try that. There are a bunch of different ones too, right? There's
I think there's
player
dozens.
It's got
That's
a lot of
what I want.
expansions and different themes, and they even did a second version of Quartermaster General. But so it's very rare that in our hobby we get the card game or the dice game that matters, that actually is a worthy addition to the franchise. I can't think of any that I actually like. I've played a lot. Castles of Burgundy, the card game, Arkwright, the card game, Race for the Galaxy, the dice game. I've tried them all. They're all fine. I like Roll for the Galaxy. I think that's of those, I'd say that's the best of the card game, the dice game. But usually,
But hold on that point. Remember that Race for the Galaxy is
the card game
of Puerto Rico.
of Puerto Rico or of San Juan, right? Isn't that the?
Well, San Juan was they were
card
trying
game
to do
version.
a card game version of Puerto Rico, and
Right.
both San Juan and Race for the Galaxy lost the competition.
Tom Lehman lost
whatever, but
that,
it was
yeah.
clearly awesome, and so then it got rethemed as a space thing, and there's no Race for the Galaxy. But anyway, that's to me the most successful example of the card game of a board game.
Right. But those are usually games wherein the experience is giving you a different flavor of the same feel of the game, right? This doesn't. I've played War of the Ring, the board game, a lot. This could just be called Lord of the Rings team card. It just this isn't giving me the feel of that game at all. In terms of mechanics, in terms of by the end of it, the epic story has unfolded in an interesting way that is close to the novel, but has gone its own interesting path. But this to me completely stands on its own. Do not let the card game,
what you're
dice
describing
game,
is not a bad thing at all.
No.
Because what it does do, kind of maybe jumping ahead a little bit, is it does completely recreate a Lord of the Rings narrative that you would be familiar with, but is also completely, like there's a lot of freedom for it to change.
Yeah.
You are not, completely mirroring the beats of the books or the movies.
Right.
But these are
by
still
the end,
familiar.
it feels like an epic battle between good and evil, and it does give you that sense. So I think, to me, this is the best sort of the card game iteration of a thing I've ever seen, and to the point where it didn't need to be to me. Like, this could have just been its own thing. Like, they didn't need the IP of the War of the Ring, which is a prestigious.
It needed the Lord of the Rings IP. It didn't need the War of the Ring.
That's
IP.
what I'm getting at. Exactly. So for people who don't know much about this game, the designers Ian Brody, artists Antonio DeLuca, John Hodgson, John Howe, Matteo Macchi, and a bunch of other famous Lord of the Rings artists, and people like that who have done
These are classic. A lot of those are classic Lord of the Rings artists.
This is not IP or art from the movies. This is original, IP from the novels and the books and
calendars,
all the things throughout the years, and it's
and
gorgeous.
War of the Ring, right?
And War of the Ring, and it's gorgeous artwork. But there's actually a lot of original artwork in this that isn't in War of the Ring. There is a couple recycled pieces, but a lot of it is new and beautiful.
It's like, but John Howe and Alan Lee are the big Lord of the Rings illustrators from over decades, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, like I said, it is best at 4, definitely. Plays at 2, plays at 3. There's even a solo variant. And just announced 2 days ago, the next expansion, War of the Ring, the card game, Against the Shadow, coming out this fall, solo and co-op only. This is not an addition to the card game. This is a new expansion that actually gives you different modes to play it in that does not affect the game you could buy right now. It's almost just a new version you can play by yourself or as a co-op. Jordan, you are new to the podcast. Give us a little breakdown of how this game plays, what it is.
Sure. So in the 4-player game, each player will have a deck that has only specific factions in it. So on the Free People's team, there will be one player that has the Dunedain and the Elves, and on the other, Free People's player will just have Rohan, the Wizards, the Hobbits, some other cards like that.
But there's like a Frodo, essentially, like there's a Frodo character,
There's a
player,
Frodo deck.
Right.
There's a Sauron player, there's a Saruman player, and the Dunedain are elves, and Aragorn's kind of
Aragorn's
like
deck.
your ultimate hero. There you go.
So these are sort of suits in cards in a certain way.
Right. And the players will be playing those cards out to battlefields and paths, which are locations in the center of the table that they're trying to control.
And the locations are other cards. They're just sort of large tarot-sized cards. There's no board here. This is an entire game that can be stored in deck boxes, basically.
Right, right. And this game does strip out all the geography, essentially, of War of the Ring in favor of those cards. And so you'll be playing to these battlefields and these paths. They take different symbols. So armies can play to battlefields. Characters can play to both battlefields and paths. The paths follow the story of Frodo. And then the battlefields are sort of the story of the armies fighting over these locations. And both teams will be trying to have one more point on each of these locations to score them. The Free Peoples can score whatever the points are on the battlefield and the path, but the Shadow player has an opportunity to really load up on what's called corruption on Frodo by putting a bunch of cards on the path and winning by a lot. And they get sort of the difference in terms of points. And so that's one special.
They have a high ceiling.
Very high ceiling.
Right. So we're kind of like constantly fighting a series of running fights.
Right.
And like, I guess theoretically there could be 9 rounds to this game because we have like the path. It comes over 9 stages. There's 3 options of every level of the path, but we're almost always fighting a battlefield and a path, and we're kind of committing cards. And there's a nice tension in this game between kind of like playing cards to reserve, which are in front of you, which can kind of like help build your engine. You don't commit them immediately to a battle versus times where you play cards directly from your hand into the fight. And like the way these cards work, like could not be simpler, because unlike something like Magic the Gathering, whereas if I want to play a certain card, I've got to have 1 red mana and then 2 colorless or something like this. Right. The cost in this game is if I want to play a card, I play the card and I reserve / discard, same thing, a card from my hand. That's the cost of every single card of the game.
Which is exactly how Marvel Champions works, which is really popular LCG now. And you were saying Flesh and Blood also works like that, where you're paying for a card by discarding a card from your hand.
Right. Although Flesh and Blood cards have different costs, and you can discard them for different amounts.
Right. Now,
so wrong.
So
well, no.
So people who might not know very much about this game, I think the simplest way to compare it is to think of it as a very complicated version of Marvel Snap or Smash Up, which is
Smash
another
Up, yeah.
game that works like that, where you're basically you have these cards that are going sideways on the table, and you're playing cards to either side of it, counting up the strength.
So these are
of
like
those
lanes,
cards.
right? It's a good point. These are like lanes.
Counting up strength
in
of
each
those
round,
cards,
yeah.
and whoever blinks first and ends the round kind of like will score those. But it's not as simplistic as that because there is a huge amount of card knowledge that comes into it. There's ways of refighting battles, which is very fun and thematic. You think Minas Tirith is over. You think you've gotten the big 3 points off of that. Everybody, as we learned in this game, has a card in their hand that can refight Minas Tirith. No, sorry, you lose those 3 points. We're fighting them again. Oh, did you already kill all your best Minas Tirith characters? That was a mistake. We were still going to fight that 3 more times. You blew your load a little early on that one. And so there is a huge amount of card knowledge, which reminds me a lot of some of the great game experiences we've had with Game of Thrones, the card game, and sort of these competitive card games, which I adore and love. And I'm always, and anybody who loves Netrunner or Arkham Horror or Game of Thrones or even Magic the Gathering, these players are always looking for the board game version of that. I'm just going to say this is as close as I've ever seen a game come to that experience of I've got this awesome hand of cards. How can I make lemonade out of these lemons? How can I play the mind games? How can I tutor at my deck and cycle my deck and get the cards I want and build my engine and build my Voltron and all these concepts that you have for these LCGs and competitive card games that you're used to? Those all come into play in this game and are useful skills and tools that you will use in order to work with a partner, which is also a really fun aspect that you rarely get in these kind of competitive card games where it's you and another person battling out another team. It just does so many fun things right in that space that I feel like is so hard to crack as a single box one-time purchase, like with a ton of replayability.
Right. And not only what are my pieces in my deck that I need to get out for this specific situation, but what are Trey's pieces? What are Matt's pieces that I need to combat, that I need to be thinking about ahead of time? And when you have that card knowledge, the game really elevates to another level.
Yeah. This game, that said, like they never ask you to construct a deck here.
Right.
The decks are the deck.
Yep.
Now,
what you buy is what you
as
get.
you play, though, you kind of winnow. That's actually a mechanism in here, but you play cards, things get thin, certain cards get eliminated, you play certain cards to the board, so the character of your deck changes as you go. What I would say though is like this is starting to sound complicated. It's really not. I found that like my first play of this was pretty straightforward, and it did the good thing of like I played my first play of this game. I was having meaty decisions, but I also wasn't completely paralyzed by them. And having played the game through the first time, I was like, oh, I'm starting to appreciate this. Or, oh, if I had to do it again, I would have done this. And, oh, now I finally see how I'm supposed to use Gollum, because I really didn't see why Gollum was good the first time Gollum was in my hand. But now I kind of, I see what you do with Gollum. And so first time I played this, it was a fantastic experience. Like it was a very strong narrative experience that was not intimidating at all, even in a loss.
15-minute teach, would you say? Not long.
Not too bad. I mean, you kind of like suss a few things out as you go. You know, some of the differences between paths and battlegrounds and what it means played reserve. But I think this is a pretty accessible game that gets deeper for you every time you play it.
Well, I think it has a great first game, but I also think an experienced team will destroy a new player.
Absolutely.
Destroy, like it'll be over so fast. And this game has a mercy mechanism in it, wherein if any team is up by 10 at the end of a round, the game instantly ends, which if you have 2 good players, and I mean, God forbid they're the free people, that game's over round 3. Like that's going to be over really quickly. So, and
it's not just even a mercy thing, though. It actually had the knockout is a implicit threat that the free peoples have. Like I don't think Mordor can really, at least not in the first half of the game. There's no knockouts for the shadow players.
But I think it could even have it's a good learning curve, because you give the free people players to the newer players, and you tell them, if you don't win by round 5, you will lose. But try to win by round 5. Like go, you see if you like. That's your goal. Otherwise, you won't have the tools and the knowledge to win the back 9 of the game.
Right.
But go, do really push hard on the first 5 rounds, and I think that's actually a really good sort of learning mechanism.
It's a fantastic rule, because it seemed like a lot of the discussions, and like the discussions in this game are really rich.
Yeah.
You're not head down. You're often talking with your partner. I found in the last game, for example, that we played, I was having to be very guarded in when I talk to my partner.
Yeah.
Like there's plenty of times where I was not going to say something to you until Jordan's turn was complete, because I need him to commit to something, and then I say, okay, I think we should commit to this particular battleground. I can bring a lot to it. It makes a lot of richness in the conversations. But I was going to say, one of the things that's especially rich of this, what you call the mercy rule, the win by 10 rule, is that a lot of times we have to be like, you know what, we're getting too close to getting knocked out.
Right.
We have to, our backs are against the wall. We have to fight some fights that we may not want to fight, just so that we can avoid this, so that we're then set up for a strong finish. And like, again, that's like some great social interaction in the game.
And this game deals with the secret information really well. The rule is just very simple. Anything you say to your partner has to be heard by everybody at the table, which is just a good way to deal with this.
Right, and you can't identify specific cards in your hand, I think.
Right, you're not allowed to say specific cards you have in your hand, but otherwise, basically...
But it's legit to say, can you play to this path? And you can say yes or no.
Yeah, can you win this? I can't help very much. I can help a little, things like that. But it's a very simple, like...
We haven't had any issues of like having to police of like, you really can't say that. Like, I don't think that hasn't come up.
I don't think it would matter, because that would only really help if one team knew the cards better than the other. Otherwise, even if I say like, do you have Aragorn in your hand? The other team knows that too now. Like, now they're not playing certain things. Like,
that's right. It wouldn't break it.
No.
If that rule were violated.
Not at all. Let's talk about our experiences playing the game so far. So I've played it, 7 or 8 times by now. I've played it 2-player a couple times. I've played the solo variant that you can find on BGG, mostly just to get comfortable with the cards, and sort of card knowledge is a huge part of this game. Like, you really, not only do you have to know what's in your deck, you have to know what's in your partner's deck, you have to know what's in
each
your
of the 4
decks.
decks plays differently.
Yes, and
not completely differently, but there's nice quirks between them.
They have a different style, and even a different tempo, and different ways of sort of getting there. Everybody sort of has an engine they're trying to get going. And overall, the teams play a little differently too. The free people are about rushing, burning down, getting in there quick, trying to force, force the shadow to do things, because the shadow gets really strong as the game goes on. It takes them a while to build up their engine, and towards the end of the game, a lot of the path cards are really beneficial towards them. And by then, if they've got enough engine, it can be really hard for the free people to overcome that. But the free people have a really strong beginning, and they could actually, if play really heavily, could win the game early and get that 10-point lead. Like, it's not uncommon for by round 3 or 4 free people to be up 9 points, 8-9 points, and be really threatening the end of the game and forcing the shadow player to start sacrificing pieces of their engine in order to stave off that, sort of what you were talking about a second ago. And that's a really fun balance that I think we can't yet say like this game is perfectly balanced, but it's definitely.
I have no idea.
I'm not worried about it right now.
No.
Right.
Yeah, I haven't seen any card that feels unfair. I haven't seen anything that feels. I haven't seen any mistakes, like clear mistakes that I would say have made by the design team or the playtesters or what. It feels so far like, I think like in many games like this. As you're experiencing the game, you might feel like the free people are stronger in your first couple of games because they can push a victory, and the shadow player doesn't yet really understand how to play the long game,
how to leverage their Nazgul,
and exactly how to slow down and do what they need to do. So but that's also good. You want a game like this that's easier to play from one half, and it's possible that people who played it a million times could say like, well, once you have 2 balanced teams, it really the shadow player is over. It can be really who knows.
Yeah, we're not there yet.
But as of right now, it feels. I'm excited to take either side. And once you sort of get the tempo of the game down and know like, okay, you should feel like the shadow should feel like they're losing at the beginning, and the free people should feel like they're losing in the end, but it's still anyone's game. Like not today's game, but the game before last week, we had a game where round 9, which is the final round of the game, it was 0-0, tied score. Like not 0-0, but we had the same scores.
It went to the wire.
Yeah, and that was really exciting. And then and the free people won by 2 points in that one. And it felt really fair and it felt really balanced. It was like, oh, this is the sort of the tempo that you would expect after a certain number of plays of this. It's like, oh, wow, we all did the right things. Going to the last round, good luck.
Yeah, tempo is such a huge part of this game. Not just the free people are strong at the beginning and evil is strong at the end, but the turn-to-turn tempo. How many cards am I going to play this turn? How many am I going to save? How much card draw do I have coming to me next turn? And the last game we played, the free people kind of ran out of steam around round 7, round 8, and just didn't have enough card draw. Did not play the tempo properly and just fell flat on our faces. And it's great that the game allows you to do that. You really have to sort of focus in on how do I spend these resources, adequately to A, either have an impact and not waste everything, or B, to conserve and preserve my position for later.
One of the things I love about this game is that it has narratively embraced the IP in a way that is very well done and completely kind of like consistent with the roles. You have, especially on the free people side, you have these characters that we kind of know and love from the books and movies, and they have asymmetrical powers that kind of fit with who they are. For example, in our game that we just played, you were able to get Galadriel out early with like her proper items, where she was like a fully operational Galadriel.
Her mirror, yeah.
She had her mirror. She didn't have her.
I had a ring in my hand, but I didn't play it.
Didn't play the ring, but this meant that you had like you may not have appreciated. I think you did, but like a lot of the things I was doing as the Mordor players, I've got these Nazgul, and I can attack the free people's hands. I can often force people to forsake, which is a mechanism here. It's just like you have to get rid of a card. You have the option of just getting rid of it and out of the game from the top of your deck. It could be from your hand. It could be a card that you've played. But like once you got your Mirror of Galadriel down, that allowed you to always look at the top card in your deck. So that actually provided a lot of protection against like what I wanted to do. You may not have been aware, but it's like once you got that mirror down, I was like, well, I really don't want to be forsaking anymore because... and I think there's plenty of games where Galadriel's not important at all.
Right.
But in this one, it was a early Galadriel, game, and that gave you a lot of control over your hand, I think, was kind of the way... like, she's not overtly powerful the way some of the big bombs, which is just like you draw an extra card each round, which in this kind of game is as enginey as the game gets. Yeah. But... it gave it a certain flair.
Yeah,
and it felt like, we're playing against Galadriel here. And in fact, in our game, like we didn't see Aragorn till the end. And when we did see Aragorn, he was played to the board and died immediately. I mean, it was in a good cause.
Right.
But this was...
but ineffective. A good cause, but ineffective.
Well, and that's one of the fun decision points of this game is you have these resources, which are your powerful cards, and they can be used multiple times to do cool things, but they also are there to be lost forever in the most important moments in order to really seal victories or get important things.
Right.
And like when to use those, when to not. The timing of that is a huge...
when are you going to commit Gandalf? I've got my Witch King in reserve. It's doing good things for me, but at some point he's going to go in.
Yeah,
right. And that's a mechanic that I think it's true of both teams, but it feels more potent on the free people side. Like when you lose a character, they're usually gone forever. You're Nazgul, for instance, you can cycle them and get most of their effect and get them right back. And in that way, it actually feels like War of the Ring, the board game.
Right.
Because all the free people's troops, once they're dead, they're never coming back, right? And the evil side in that game can continually generate more and more troops.
Well, we had a fight early in the game that it wasn't exactly a draw, but we had a kind of a big one where we committed a lot of forces. But it felt like as the Shadow team, you and I, Matt, like it didn't end up resulting in a lot of points, but we did kill a lot of characters. And it was like, okay, that was well done because we've eliminated certain tools from the free people's arsenal here.
Yeah, I think that was a good trade for you.
It was.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, there's a really cool mechanic in the game where when you take a card from your hand and you put it on the table, you get to say, reach back on the menu, boys, which isn't in the rules. But in fact, you cannot...
it's implicit.
You cannot play without saying that every time you put a cool card down. So that I really love that they added that into the game. That's really neat.
I think that it was voted like the most popular line from the books.
All right. Well, clearly we all like this game. I will say that this game arrived. I pre-ordered it because I kind of pre-order everything that has Lord of the Rings in the title.
Such a beautiful
game. Cards are gorgeous, but I wasn't that hyped on it when it came. I was like team-based, like card game version of a board game that I never play because it takes forever. Like wouldn't I just rather make the day and play that game? And like I just wasn't that hyped for it. And then you had played it, and you were kind of like, "It's pretty good, Matt." And I was sort of hyped, but I still was like, "It'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll just be,
So what point did you buy the deluxe edition then? Or
No. I so it's not the deluxe edition. I just have these tins that come with sleeves. And I have the same tins already for the War of the Ring board game. And so I felt like I had to have them also for this.
Okay. But you've got all the custom card sleeves and stuff, which actually does make the game feel nicer and higher.
They're not custom card sleeves. They're just they're not like they don't have like pretty art on them or anything. But they're just it's hard to get tarot card sleeves.
That's right. That's what I mean. Though.
And you need those for the battlegrounds and stuff like that. I'd like to sleeve cards that get shuffled a lot, but But anyway, this was not a game I was hyped for. And the first time I played it, I had one of those experiences where I was like, oh no, this is awesome. I think this is really interesting. And then every play I've had of it, it opened up a bit more. And I think it's a pretty special game. I think it's a lot better than the War of the Ring, the card game, has any business being. Like, it totally stands on its own as like a really interesting
I would be curious about how this came about. Like, did Ares or whatever get the IP and say, like, okay, who's the right person to make this game?
Yeah.
Looking at Quartermaster General and saying, okay, Ian Brody.
Who decided to make it a team game? Like, that's awesome.
I guess so, right. I mean, it seems so incorporated and innate in what it's doing. That and it's the essential part. It's what's so rich about it. But it was the right decision. I can't imagine it as a 2-player. Like, 2-player seems so limited compared to what the 4 is.
Yeah.
It also makes me want to go play Quartermaster General again with 6.
Yeah, totally. Now, the team games are having a little bit of a moment as well. Like we talked about this. Guards of Atlantis 2 is obviously like a very popular team game right now. That's 2-on-2, 3 versus 3. That was very novel to me when you first introduced me to that. It's like, oh shit, team game. Like we never play those. Cerebria is a game that I played once and I thought was fine, a little too heavy for what it was.
La Familia.
I just got La Familia from Capstone, which we haven't played yet, which is also a 2 versus 2 worker placement game. So it's just interesting that there's a bunch of team games out right now.
Right.
And it's not because I'm just happening to notice them. It's that I just don't remember there ever being a team game for like the last 10 years that anybody talked about other than Cerebria. That was not just a filler or something. That wasn't like Tichu.
Yeah. Another one that just came out is The Defense of Procyon 3, which is a Euro-y war game, another Euro-y war game team game by David Turksey.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah,
I'll check that out. Now, I just think it's cool because the minute you have a team game, it instantly has an innate level of interactivity to it that you don't normally get from a 1v1v1v1, Euro or whatever. It just automatically adds a level of like, like you're looking, I don't know, just you're looking around the table at your partner, you're looking at your enemies, you're just trying to figure out how, like, it instantly gives this cool, almost like hidden role feel to it a little bit where it's like you're trying to be sneaky. Like I remember even sort of showing Trey when you guys were looking away at one point, like pointing to a card, like you kind of get moments. I don't know if that actually breaks a rule. I think that might break a rule.
Well, no, but there was a lot of timing issues of cards that we've played to reserve, and it's kind of like, when do you pop them?
Right.
And we were making a lot of decisions about, okay, here we're heavily committing right now. And getting that timing down. And for example, you'd played a few cards where you're going to bring certain battlefields back into play. And like, that's a tough question of like, what's the right time to do it? And we were kind of like, at one point we did it. It's like, I don't know if this is the right time, but we're doing it.
Yeah.
And that felt fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the fact that this is a team game really allows the factions to be more fleshed out, because you can have a deck that focuses on just the elves and the Dunedain, and they can focus on those synergies. Whereas in the 2-player game, you shuffle all the cards together and just draw from there, and you don't get as many of the synergies. Right. Mm-hmm. But I think the teamwork in this game is really just, how much do we want to commit on this?
Yeah.
Right? Do we really want to go heavy? Do we not want to go heavy? There's nothing in this game that you must always have a team member help you with.
You don't feel quarterbacked. You
Right.
feel like you have your own thing you're doing, but you also don't want to mess up your teammates' plans more than you want their help. You don't want to like, are you going all in on this? Because I won't, if you will. Like, and it's, I can save this. No, you go. Okay, it's
but these conversations in face of the enemy are often interesting. The thing I haven't seen yet that I want to keep playing this game, but for example, I know part of the richness of the Free Peoples is that the elves can play items on the hobbits.
Yes, that's
a lot
true.
of times, and like I still haven't really.
Those are two
seen
different
that.
teammates.
Yeah, they're playing across from each other. But for example, like how do you, at some point, like is this a thing that's actually hard to coordinate, but you need to? Which is, there's times where I think the hobbits need to commit a bunch of hobbits to a particular battleground, and then the elves are going to play lembas bread on them, which actually eliminates a lot of corruption. And so like that actually is like a team play that you actually want to be building towards, that I still haven't seen yet. But I know that that's in the arsenal of the free players. And I think there's a few of those like that. And I think one of the things that we did well in our game, whether it was intentional or not, is you were able to bring battlefields back into play when I was in position to actually win them. Right.
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of strong interactions. Like there's a right time and a wrong time on these. I was ready, and I was geared up and ready to go to take advantage of the timing of
I think that's
your
a lot
actions.
how Shadow plays, is sort of, I set him up, you knock him down. Like, you've got this huge arsenal there, and I've got a bag of tricks. and you don't
And
really.
then there were rounds, there's battlefields where like I can't touch any of these.
Yeah, totally. And there's also like I think there's a passing mechanism that's really fun in this game where you can't pass and be out of the round until you've played a certain amount of cards, unless both of your enemies have more cards than you. And so there's this really fun sort of push and pull of when you're going to be out, when you're not, and then also you can pass at any time and come back in.
You pass 5 times and then come back.
And that's really fun because you can just lie. You can just say like I can't help at all with this, Trey. Like I'm sorry, I'm out. And the other team is like, all right, so let's just use our things on other stuff. And we haven't really had this moment yet, but I can imagine it being a very fun moment of like all of a sudden it comes back to me and it's like, Matt, everybody pass it around. No, actually I lied. I have a huge bomb, like boom, like and do some awesome stuff. And the other team had thought you were out. And like there's just there's really fun plays like that.
That's another great aspect of tempo because it's so much forced play. Oftentimes it gets to your turn and you're like, oh, I have
I don't want to play these
I
now.
really don't want to. Yeah.
I'd love to save them, but I can't. I have to get down to my
carry
limit.
over limit. It's called. Yeah,
Right.
Exactly. Well, any final thoughts? Anybody else want to say anything about this game?
This is a super strong recommend. Like I can't think of a Lord of the Rings game that I would rather play. Like I think this is the Lord of the Rings game.
It's $40, and let's talk about the replayability. And so they just announced a new expansion, as I said, coming out in the fall. It is co-op and solo only, which means not that they're saying that the base game is done. I'm sure if it's successful, they will release more. But they are not saying we need an immediate patch to this. But they're not saying we've gotten all this word of balance problems. They are saying no. We're not going to mess with this game. Like we worked really hard on this. It works. This is not a 6 month later card patch.
It's a great system.
Yeah, like I really like the confidence they're having in that of just being like, no, we're giving you more cards, but it's for a completely new mode. You still have a lot of work left to do in these 4 decks we gave you. There's a lot to explore. Take a couple years.
This will be a different experience.
Yeah, they're saying this is not an LCG. This is not a game that you're going to have to buy new cards for to keep it interesting and fun. They're announcing right away.
And it would be really hard to actually add cards to these decks.
Yeah, we were talking about that. Like, what would you even do? Because they're all so balanced. I think the only thing that my guess would be that they'll either come up. I think they'll just come up with 4 new decks, and you have to play those 4 decks against each other.
Something.
Like it'll be the Hobbit 4 decks, or I don't know, whatever.
Especially such a really important part of this game is like you are going to cycle through your decks at least twice, maybe 3 times, maybe 4 times.
Yeah, this is not a go through your
depending
deck
on how you
game.
play. So if your deck got fatter, that would actually create a lot of design problems.
Agreed.
Well, and they're so balanced around each other. They're not just balanced around your own deck. They're balanced around your partner's deck and then your enemy's 2 decks. And like you can tell a ton of work went into this to give everybody the tools they need to combat everybody, but not make it feel like a zero-sum effort where there really is. Now it just comes down to brinksmanship and, mind games and timing and tempo and actual things that you have to learn over time as opposed to just like, well, if I luck, there's also like very few luck mechanics in the game. There's very few. There are moments where you can whiff, but
That's right. There's some cards where you like draw 7 and get 2
There's
Nazgul.
no remove a random card from your opponent's hand. There's no like show me your hand, I pick one out, and then the whole game falls.
And in fact, they protect the most important cards that can't be kind of knocked out that way.
The game is really rewarding knowledge, not luck. Like the game wants you to get better at it.
But it doesn't feel bad. Like that knowledge that you're talking about, some of it doesn't feel bad your first time through.
Right.
Like for example, okay, so I was playing the Mordor player. I've got Grond, who's an attack 3, which is as powerful as any card gets in the game. So there's a big battering ram, if you remember this from the movies, the kind of wolf head shaped battering ram, and it feels like, oh, this is a winner.
Yeah,
this card's going to win a battle. But I know, having played it now, you've got a 3 defense Gates of Minas Tirith card.
Yeah, that's right.
Kind of thing that it's like, here's a direct counter. Yeah. I also know that the Rohan team has cut cards like Éowyn, when played directly to a battleground, can just kill a Nazgul, just by playing it there. Yeah. And so like that's a card that's a tough balance of like how long can I hold on to Éowyn so that when I do play her, she's going to be this massive swing.
Right. Well, that happened to me today where I played a huge 3-attack Isengard card, and then Paul played an Ent that says remove an Isengard player from this battleground, and it was just like, well, that was my
right. Treebeard's a big bomb in when played at the right time, and again, like so incredibly narratively driven. If you remember, like that's exactly what
it doesn't feel cheap at all. Like there's not every card has a counter like that, but there are some big ones that do, and it's about like how can I force my opponent to play that at the wrong time, or make them play it, and then, oh, by the way, we're fighting that battle again. Oh, you don't have that card now? Oh, that's a shame. I still have mine. Like that's really fun, and those are rich choices.
Yeah, this is a super strong recommend for me. I think anybody who's a Lord of the Rings fan should get this. Is not heavy.
No,
it's got a lot of depth, but it's fun to discover.
Yeah,
it's very deep. I think when I play an asymmetric game, I'm always looking at a faction after playing it and thinking, do I want to play this one again, or do I want to play something else? And if I want to play something else, the game doesn't have that much room to explore. I want to try each of the factions once or twice, and I'm done. In this game, I want to play the same faction I just played. I want to play every other faction 5 more times.
You want to master.
And master each of them.
Yeah.
And really,
a gauge I often use to find out if a game has, interesting choices or longevity is often I'll go to the strategy section on BGG and see how many threads there are and how many people have ideas. And this game has been out for a couple months, and there's 17 threads on BGG.
And they're just getting
that
going.
are just strategy, and everybody has their own take on it. You'll go to a Euro that's about for 4 years, and there's one strategy article or something. So that's always a good sign to me that even if it's not balanced, or what people are still really there's
excited to talk about
excited to talk about it, figure it out, and very confident in even their wrong opinions, or just people are coming to it with ideas. And to me, that's always a really good sign for a strategy and tactics game like this.
Agreed.
Well, that is War of the Ring by Ian Brody and Ares Games. That is obviously a strong recommend from all of us, a big sort of surprise game. That sort of takes us to the end of our podcast. Jordan, I had one question for you, though.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you, for people who want to sort of get to know you as a new member of this podcast, can you tell us, when someone asks you what your favorite game or games are, what comes to mind and why?
Right now, it's Guards of Atlantis 2, which is another team game that just came out. That's the one that jumps first to mind. I think it's
you just want to play the hell out of that.
I just want to keep playing.
Yeah.
Played it once earlier this week. There's so much depth, and the game is so simple. You have 5 cards in your hand, but the possibilities are endless.
Very social.
Very
interactive.
The teamwork is really strong. You and I need to do this together, or we're not going to do it at all.
Do you like it?
I immediately loved that game. You didn't necessarily love your first play.
I think I played it against mostly players who had played it a bunch, and I felt a little okay,
they knew how to counter you.
I need some more time. Yeah. It just, every time I did something, I just kept joking that people were playing nope cards on me. And I just got constantly hit with nope cards. Right. Oh, I'm going to build up to this cool thing. And you played a nope card. And now I don't get to do it. So I had that moment of I just want to be left alone with this game for a couple weeks and try to get my bearings before everybody nopes me to death. Right. Because I was just feeling like I didn't have any choices to make. Yeah.
Yeah. That's hugely possible in that game. And the skill ceiling is just so high. But if you sort of push through that sort of early first few plays, I think it's really
it was enough for me to back it a couple weeks ago when they did a reprinting of it. I could see that. And also it was funny. We had a game day last week. And Jordan couldn't come because he was at a wedding, and it was the one game we kept being this would be the perfect game for this. We have some new gamers, we have some experienced gamers, we have people who like Ameritrash games, we have people who like Euro games.
It feels big also. It feels this is an event. We're playing 3-on-3 Guards of Atlantis 2. This is going to generate some memories to kind of use Paul's.
It's one of those rare games that I think is a real crowd pleaser along a wide gamut of players that doesn't sort of make the Euro heavy gamers feel like they're, being nice by playing this, that actually feels like something meaty and interesting. And any game where it's all about experience is fun because you want to keep playing it and get better, and the idea of I really like improving at something,
right?
That is a positive feeling for me. And this is definitely a game that's the more Age of Steam. That's the reason I keep wanting to play it, is not to win it, because I want to see that self-improvement. I want to know I'm getting better at it. That's what I'm striving for.
Right. And this game has that in spades, right?
Yeah.
That's the entire game is, can you improve? Can you get better? How can I counter my opponents? How can I think about what they're thinking about? It's something special.
And we had the joke that Jordan was bringing it to every game night. And it's very heavy. And he would carry this giant box in every week.
It's a huge box.
And we'd be so what should we play? And we'd always joke well, Jordan's got Guard of Atlantis too, and nobody wants to play it. And it's this giant box of minis. And we're all thanks for bringing them, Jordan. And then all of a sudden things
have changed.
We finally gave it a shot, and we're okay, we were jerks to not bring that to the table earlier. He lugged this
we are jerks.
30-pound box to the game night for months in a row.
Yeah, but it was worth it in the end. Got you guys to try it, and I'm sure we'll be playing more of it going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, it's a pleasure having you here, Jordan. Are you active on our Discord at all? If people want to say hi,
Yeah, I am. Jay says yeah on the Discord.
Jay says yeah, which is a little bit of a play on your name.
Exactly. Yeah.
Say
So yeah. Say yeah.
say yeah. Got it.
Push the button.
Yeah. Wait, do I know the ending preamble? Can I just do it off the dome?
You're not prepared.
I wasn't prepared. I didn't prepare for this.
You've been listening to Game Brain.
A board
Produced
game
and edited
podcast.
by Matthew Robinson, Trey Elson, Tom Donnelly, and Ben Mandelker. Find us online on Facebook, Twitter.
GameBrainPod.com.
Come to our Discord. Thanks to Edamar Peleg for doing our art. You can watch him at Kerbaloni.com.
Ooh, good.
And that's it. Give us have a good time with your friends or make friends playing games, you know? That's what we do.
So close.
I give you 1 box fart for that.